He sacrificed and burned incense on the high places. The king went to Gibeon to sacrifice there, for that was the great high place. Solomon offered 1,000 burnt offerings on that altar. So when you think about the high places were obviously hilltops within the nation where normally it's where pagan practices were carried out, where pagan people worshipped the false gods. And so they had these high places because they thought it brought them closer to God. Okay, and so we have here that, but it wasn't that the Israelites were always worshiping false gods. There were high places that were not corrupted with pagan practices. And here we have Solomon going to a high place to worship. And then it shifts gears right away, and then it says that he went to Gibeon to sacrifice. And it seems, now Gibeon was also a high place, all right? But Gibeon, if you want to put it this way, was probably a more acceptable place to go to worship. And we don't know, because nothing is said, was Solomon chastised by someone or someone's concerning where he went to worship, and so he corrects course and goes to a place that is well accepted as a place of worship. We don't know. It just says that he goes to the high places, and then in the next verse it talks about him going to Gibeon to sacrifice there. Coming back to that in a moment. So he went to Gibeon, but we also have a place called Bethel, all right? And Bethel is mentioned as a place of worship as well. And in fact, it factors into the history of Israel in the Old Testament. So let me just rehearse a little bit here. When we think about Bethel, the first occurrence of Bethel is with Abram. When he comes from Ur of the Chaldees, it says in Genesis 13, verses 3 and 4, that he pitched his tent there. So that was the first place that he took up lodging in Canaan. And then we mention, and he also built an altar there. Okay. Later, his descendant Jacob had his encounter with God at Bethel. Remember the dream that he had with the ladder going up to heaven? And that's mentioned in Genesis 28, verses 10 to 22. And it says in those verses, near the end of those verses, that he built an altar to the Lord at this location. And he also came back, when he came back from his exile, if you want to put it that way, years later, he went back to Bethel and he sacrificed again at that altar. Okay. So, going back about Vern, we're dealing with the different places of worship in Israel. Okay, so we're just starting off here. The question was concerning Solomon going to the high places, and then it seems he shifts gears and goes to Gibeon instead. It doesn't say why, except that perhaps the first places he went to were also used for pagan worship, or could have been, although not all of them were. And then he goes to Gibeon, which is a more acceptable place of worship. Okay, so let's deal with the Ark of the Covenant first. Okay. The Ark, I just wrote all these notes down, and I have scripture references. If you want a copy of this after, I'd be glad to photocopy it for you, because there's a lot of scripture references. I'm going to reference them, but I'm not going to read the passages, okay, because that would we'd be here till 9 o'clock. Okay, all right, so the ark, as we know, was first assembled at Mount Sinai and carried to each destination along the Israelites' wilderness travels. Eventually, the Israelites arrived at the Promised Land and carried the ark across the dry bed of the Jordan River, Joshua 3. The ark was then carried in front of those who marched around Jericho before the city fell to the Israelites, Joshua 6. Soon after, this ark of the tabernacle the ark and tabernacle were set up at the cult center of Bethel. Okay, so the first place it takes its home, the tabernacle and the ark, is at Bethel. And it was there that the Israelites consulted the Lord before attacking the Benjaminites at Gibeah. Now, that's in Judges 20. If you want to know the whole story, the Benjaminites, however you want to say their name, okay, they got involved in some immorality. And the rest of the tribes gathered and were going to wipe them out, okay, for having done what they were doing. That's in Judges 20. Okay, so it says here the Israelites consulted the Lord before attacking the tribe of Benjamin, okay, at Gibeah. All right. The judge Deborah also held court near Bethel, possibly indicating that the ark was still located at Bethel during her time. That's in Judges 4, verse 5. Sometime later, in the era of the judges, the ark and tabernacle were moved further north to Shiloh. Joshua 18 and Judges 18:31. Much later, the Israelites carried the ark into battle near Aphek to try to ensure victory against the Philistines. Okay, I'm going to insert something here. If you remember King Saul, he was to meet Samuel likely at Bethel, and Samuel was going to do a sacrifice. But Saul disobeyed the Lord and Samuel and went ahead and did it himself and paid the consequences. All right, so the Israelites took the ark from the tabernacle out into battle against the Philistines, almost treating it like a magic symbol of some kind, that somehow the ark itself would give them a victory. But the ark was captured instead and taken to Ashdod, Gath, and Ekron, 3 different places, 1 Samuel chapters 4 and 5. The worship center at Shiloh appears to have been overrun as well. Okay, so everything, the tabernacle and the ark had been at Shiloh at this time, and from Psalm 78, verse 60, and Jeremiah 7, 12 to 14 mentions that Shiloh having been overrun by the Philistines. Okay. Many of the priests apparently relocated to the town of Nob near Jerusalem. Okay, so the priests left the area during the attack of the Philistines and the destruction or the taking of the ark. And remember, too, that this is the place where Nob is the place where Saul comes and he tries to exterminate the priests. Okay? So that's in 1 Samuel 22. The tabernacle and altar at that time were relocated to the high place at Gibeah. Okay, 1 Chronicles 16, verses 39 to 40, and chapter 21, 29. Meanwhile, in each Philistine town where the ark was taken, the people suffered terrible plagues. 1 Samuel 5. So the Philistines eventually placed the ark on a cart and sent it to the Israelite town of Beth Shemesh, 1 Samuel 6. Then Israelites from Kiriath Jearim came and transported the ark to their town, where the ark remained for 20 years, 1 Samuel 6, 19 to 7, 2. After David became king over all Israel, he attempted to move the ark to Jerusalem on a new cart, but the procession was halted when the oxen pulling the cart stumbled, and the Lord struck a man named Uzzah, struck him dead as he reached out and took hold of the ark to steady it. 2 Samuel 6, 1 to 11.
Excuse me.
Yes.
I always wonder about this. So would it be better that the ark would fall down on the ground, you think?
Maybe it wouldn't have.
Amen.
We don't know.
I didn't think about that. Maybe
Who does the ark belong to?
to the Lord.
So, yes, I think They had been instructed very specifically that only the priests were allowed to carry the ark on poles, but no one was allowed to touch it. And so I think the Lord would have intervened, or it would have fallen. And then the priest would have had to pick it up with the poles. Maneuver it with the poles and get it back up the way it's supposed to be. Okay. It kind of talks to us about the seriousness of sin, no matter how small. If you disobey the Lord, you disobey the Lord, and if he says what the punishment is going to be, you suffer the consequences. And there's no way to rationalize your way out of this. It's just this. The law was the law, period. Yeah, I understand what you're saying, and any of us would say, oh yeah, what's the big deal? Reaching out and pushing, holding it so it doesn't fall over, what's the big deal? Yeah.
I'm not even thinking about deal. I'm thinking that automatically when you see that something so precious.
Yes.
That's what
A natural reaction.
Yes.
Yes, exactly. Right. You are correct. Okay. Later David attempted to move the ark again, but this time men carried the ark instead of placing it on a cart. 2 Samuel 6. So obviously David went back and read the law to find out what in the world was going on here, because if you remember, he was really upset that this guy dropped dead when he reached out and touched the ark. And so this perhaps indicated a new focus to carefully follow the law of Moses regarding the ark's transfer. Numbers 7:9 is where it talks about the penalty for touching the ark. After bringing the ark to Jerusalem, David placed it in a special tent, 2 Samuel 6:17, 2 Chronicles 1:4. But the tabernacle and altar remained at the high place of Gibeon. 1 Kings 3, verses 1-4, and 2 Chronicles 1, 5-13. We talked about this last week. Why did David keep the ark in Jerusalem rather than send it back to the tabernacle? So he'd be blessed? Wouldn't that be like treating the ark like some kind of idol, if I be so bold, or like a magic wand? I mean, that's what they did. That's what the Israelites did when they took it into battle and took it at the front lines, okay, and lost it, okay. They were treating it like some kind of a magic potion to give them victory. So.
Wasn't Jerusalem the place where Jews supposed to come to worship the Lord?
In Jerusalem? Not at this time. No, because there was no temple. Okay, that came later. So the place of worship was at Gibeon. That's where the tabernacle went to Shiloh, and then it came back. Okay. Any other thoughts about why David didn't return the ark to the tabernacle, where it seemed to be the logical place to be?
But then the ark is supposed to be occupied by God.
Yes. So the idea is you've got God in your presence in the city? I'm just asking.
I read somewhere that some other people had it and they were pretty blessed.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, that's true. Yeah, the Israelites, not the Philistines, they
No, they were.
they kept moving it from town to town. And if you recall, if you go back and read the passages, their god Dagon, when they took it into their temple, with Dagon, he kept falling on his face.
Dagon lost his head.
He lost his head, yes.
Wasn't they have also some kind of health replication and really bad situation, so they have later on made the golden...
The rats.
Yeah.
And they send the golden rats along with the ark when they send it back, right?
So
The rats being one of their gods, okay? At any rate, here's a thought. The reason David didn't return, perhaps, doesn't say in Scripture, David wanted to build the temple. Okay, that was his goal. He wanted to build the temple. He had been already assimilating all the materials needed for the temple. And then God said, no, you are not allowed to build the temple. Your son Solomon will build the temple. And so in my mind, at least, David kept the ark in Jerusalem with the plan to build the temple and then move the ark into the temple, which seems reasonable, and that could be why he did not return it to the tabernacle, because he was planning to move on the temple. Once he had the ark in Jerusalem, he was prepared to start work on the temple, okay, until God told him, no, you can't do it. You're a man of blood, okay? You're a warrior. You've been in battle. I'm not having anybody who's shed blood, okay, in battle or whatever, to build the temple. Solomon is going to be a man of peace. He's the man I've chosen to carry that out. So, right or wrong, that was my thought on it anyways. Okay. Okay, and then I have here, years later, David's son Solomon became king and built a permanent temple in Jerusalem to house the ark. Okay, 1 Kings 6, chapters 6 to 8, and 2 Chronicles chapters 3 to 5. So that kind of gives us a little bit of a history of the different places of worship that the Israelites had as they moved from captivity into the promised land and set up a couple different places of worship in the northern part of the country, and then eventually with the temple being built, which we haven't dealt with yet, obviously in Jerusalem. One other thing, one last thought, because we haven't dealt with that yet, that's coming later. After Solomon, when he died and his son took over, if you remember good old Rehoboam, and how he asked the younger men what he should do, okay, and took unwise counsel, okay, which caused Jeroboam, who wasn't even related, to rebel, and we have the division of the kingdom. So we have Israel and Judah. And Jeroboam established a sanctuary there in Gibeon, and then put golden calves in there for people to worship. And so here we have the situation after Solomon's demise, if you want to put it that way. Okay. Does that help a little bit to understand how things have transpired? It can get a little complex because you have all these verses all over through Samuel and Kings, Chronicles, and to pull it all together is a little bit tricky sometimes. Okay, let's go back to 1 Kings chapter 3. First of all, I'm going to read from 2 Chronicles 1. I'm on page 109 in your notes. About halfway down the page, 2 Chronicles 1, verses 1 to 6, is a parallel passage to 1 Kings 3, verse 4. I'm just going to read that to you. It says, "Now Solomon the son of David established himself securely over his kingdom, and the Lord his God was with him and exalted him greatly. Solomon spoke to all Israel, to the commanders of thousands." Am I reading the right? Is this where I wanted to be? Yes. 2 Chronicles, yes. Okay. He spoke to the commanders of thousands and of hundreds, and to the judges, and to every leader in all Israel, the heads of the fathers' households. Then Solomon and all the assembly went to the high place, which was at Gibeon, for God's tent of meeting was there, which Moses, the servant of the Lord, had made in the wilderness. However, David had brought up the ark of God from Kiriath Jearim to the place he had prepared for it, for he had pitched a tent for it in Jerusalem. Now the bronze altar which Bezalel, the son of Uri, the son of Hur, had made was there before the tabernacle of the Lord, and Solomon and the assembly sought it out. Solomon went up there before the Lord to the bronze altar which was at the tent of meeting, and offered 1,000 burnt offerings on it. Okay, so this just gives you a little bit more detail on that than we have in verses 3 and 4 in 1 Kings chapter 3. Okay, carrying on in 1 Kings chapter 3, verses 5 to 15. Okay, I'm going to read this. In Gibeon, the Lord appeared to Solomon in a dream at night, and God said, "Ask what you wish me to give you." Then Solomon said, "You have shown great loving kindness to your servant David, my father, according as he walked before you in truth and righteousness and uprightness of heart toward you. And you have reserved for him this great loving kindness, that you have given him a son to sit on his throne as it is today. Now, O Lord my God, you have made your servant king in place of my father David, yet I am but a little child. I do not know how to go out or come in. Your servant is in the midst of your people, which you have chosen, a great people who are too many to be numbered or counted. So give your servant an understanding heart to judge your people, to discern between good and evil. For who is able to judge this great people of yours?" It was pleasing in the sight of the Lord that Solomon had asked this thing. God said to him, "Because you have asked this thing and have not asked for yourself long life, nor have asked riches for yourself, nor have you asked for the life of your enemies, but have asked for yourself discernment to understand justice. Behold, I have done according to your words. Behold, I have given you a wise and discerning heart, so that there has been no one like you before you, nor shall one like you arise after you. I have also given you what you have not asked for, both riches and honor, so that there will not be any among the kings like you all your days. If you walk in my ways, keeping my statutes and commandments, as your father David walked, then I will prolong your days." Then Solomon awoke, and behold, it was a dream, and he came to Jerusalem and stood before the ark of the covenant of the Lord, and offered burnt offerings and made peace offerings, and made a feast for all his servants. I wrote down here 5 times the word ask or asked is used, and 5 times the word give or given is used. What 3 things can we learn about Solomon from his response to the Lord's asking him what he could give him, verses 5 to 9? Did I write the answers in there or leave those blank? They're blank? Okay. Sometimes I put them in and sometimes I don't. Okay, so what can we learn about Solomon from his response to the Lord's asking him what he could give him?
That he thought of himself as too young to be able to judge people righteously.
Okay, yes. The phrase that he used was, "I am but a little child."
Yeah.
So he sees himself as young, inexperienced, okay, lacking the knowledge that he needs to rule the nation. Like we said last week in our lesson, he was about 20 years of age when he came to the throne. And he had been raised in the court, lived a privileged life, really, under the protection of his father in the court. And he hadn't been like David, who had been out in battle to win the defeat of the enemies. So yes, we see how he shows his humbleness, his humility, okay, and he admits that he's dependent on the Lord to guide him, okay. Yeah, he confesses that the job's over his head. I can't do this, you know. It's probably not a bad place to be, is it? Even for ourselves and the things that we face. If we think we have the experience and we have all the knowledge we need, that's when we usually get ourselves in some kind of trouble.
Know it all.
When we think we know what we're doing, yeah, we've all been there, haven't we? I think we can probably have experiences come to mind where we wish we had maybe asked the Lord for some guidance rather than stepping out on our own. Okay. All right. What else can we learn from him in this situation? What does he mention first? When he talks about his father.
My father was always with the Lord, and he walks with the Lord, and always talk about his precepts and his statutes.
Okay.
So Lord was always helping the father.
Okay.
That he was merciful to the father,
Yes.
and he's asking for the same mercy.
Yes. As you dealt with my father, I'm asking you that you deal with me. Okay. He was the recipient of your loving kindness. Okay. I think he could be even thinking about the covenant promise. Okay. I'm sure David had shared with Solomon that God has promised to have a king on the throne of Israel from our family line forever. Okay. If we follow the law. Okay. And so I think he in his mind, he's thinking, you placed David here, and I'm the next in line based on your covenant promise to the nation and to us as a family. And so I'm thanking you for that. Okay, that you've put me in this position. And then he goes right on and talks about the fact that, but I don't have the experience that I need. I don't know what to do. Okay. A third thing, maybe? What's he ask for specifically? What's he want to be able to do?
To govern God's people.
He wants to be able to govern them as God would want him to, right? Not according to his own wisdom.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ask for wisdom to manage the nation, basically.
Yes. Okay. And so he asks for wisdom and pardon me, understanding. Yes. Understanding. That's wisdom. We often talk about wisdom coming with age and experience. Can you imagine, here we have a 20-year-old who God is going to bless with wisdom and understanding without all the experiences of life. Amazing. Okay, and that's exactly what God offers him, or gives to him. He gives him that understanding. The understanding, when you think of understanding, one of the descriptions I got it is to understand. If someone is saying something to you, to understand them, you have to listen. So he had to have a listening heart. He had to listen to what people were saying, and then God would give him the understanding and the wisdom to handle that situation. Proverbs chapter 1, verses 1 to 7. Let's just go over there. Proverbs 1, 1 to 7. It says, the Proverbs of Solomon, the son of David, king of Israel, to know wisdom and instruction, to discern the sayings of understanding, to receive instruction in wise behavior, righteousness, justice, and equity, to give prudence to the naive, to the youth knowledge and discretion. A wise man will hear and increase in learning. A man of understanding will acquire wise counsel. To understand a proverb and a figure, the words of the wise and their riddles. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. When he wrote this, I mean, we don't know when he wrote it, but it almost sounds like maybe right after this meeting with God, that already you're seeing the wisdom and the understanding, the discernment in his very first proverb here. Okay, going over to Proverbs 8, verse 11. It says here, "For wisdom is better than jewels, and all desirable things cannot compare with her." He always talks about wisdom as being of her, okay? All right, better than all the wealth. Okay, keeping that in mind when you think of how his life unfolds after that. And then in verses, going back to 1 Kings, chapter 3, verses 10 to 15, taking a look at that, how does God respond to Solomon's request?
God gave him more than he asked.
Okay, so Solomon asked for wisdom and understanding, and so God gave him both of those, plus wealth, plus what he didn't ask for. Okay, how does that line up with Matthew 6:33? Maybe we should look at it. You know that verse?
I think it's that we shouldn't.
Does somebody know what to quote it? Diane, you got it?
Seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be added.
Right. Seek God's kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you, whatever all those things are.
He did.
Okay?
Actually.
Okay. And now, does that mean riches necessarily?
Everything else, I think.
Not necessarily riches.
Meaning
Okay.
First in needs.
needs, yeah.
Your needs, yes. What you need, God will provide. Okay? Seek him, his righteousness, and all that you need will be provided to you. Not necessarily what you want, but what you need. Okay, that's why in the prayer it talks about give us this day our daily bread, okay? Not give us this month our daily bread, or, okay, or whatever. Okay, so Solomon receives these blessings that he didn't ask for. What do you think about that? God gave him all this wealth on top of wisdom and understanding.
I think God was pleased with him, so
Yes, he was pleased with him.
he gave him more than what he asked for.
Okay, but we know the story, don't we?
Yeah.
Pardon me?
Maybe he was testing him.
I think that's a good point. Yes, that he gave him all this wealth to see what he would do with it. Was he going to apply his wisdom and understanding to the wealth and treat it like it should be dealt with? Okay? But we know that we'll get into that. Okay. Over on page 110, it says, when you read Proverbs, you will notice that the love of wisdom and the practice of discernment lead to extra blessings. So let's go back to Proverbs for a moment. Chapter 3. Verses 1 and 2. My son, do not forget my teaching, but let your heart keep my commandments. For length of days and years of life and peace they will add to you. Isn't that interesting? When you think of peace, where do we get peace from?
From closeness with the Lord.
Okay, yes. Relationship, closeness to the Lord. I was thinking of peace, the fruit of the Spirit, right? Love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, temperance. And so all of those spiritual blessings come from keeping God's commandments. And if we walk with the Lord in obedience to him, then it's not just peace, but it's all these other, the fruit of the Spirit. We can't produce this. We can't produce the fruit of the Spirit. It's a gift to us. It comes from within out. Okay? It's God's alone. Let me give a personal testimony on this. Okay, because when I was in training to be a missionary, I had a meeting with the staff, which is the staff men, to evaluate my progress, if you want to put it that way, in the training. It was not a pleasant meeting, at least not for me, because they said to me, "Who are you?" Interesting question. And they said, because we're a little confused on just who you are. Because with certain people you behave a certain way, and with other people you behave a different way. And we've observed that. So you're like a chameleon. So you change depending on who you're with. I mean, your conversation, how you handle yourself, whatever. I didn't have a clue what they were talking about, okay? And they said to me, you need, okay, and so what it came down to is I was living by my works, okay? Not living because of the fruit of the Spirit working its way out of me, but I was earning my brownie points, okay, by the way I lived, okay? So they said, what you need is you need to see the Lord. You know what my response was? How do I do that? They said, that's the problem. Because it's all based on what you do, not who you are. Who you are in the Lord. It's what you do. That's what's important to you, so that you're accepted and are loved by everybody around you, kind of thing. I left that, and they said, and if things don't change soon, you will not be in this training program much longer. And I hadn't a clue what to do. I went to my closest friends in the mission at that time, in the training, and I shared the problem with them. And I'm glad I did, because he said, oh, you know what? I came across a little book that I think you should read. It might give you the answer. It says, because of what they had said to me about I need to see the Lord, the book is called We Would See Jesus by Roy Hession. Okay, I'm not even sure if it's in print anymore, but I thought, oh yeah, that'll give me the answer. Then I'll know what to do. And as I read that book, I realized that my spiritual walk was not based at all on what I do. Because what could I do to earn my salvation? What can I do to earn God's respect and love post-salvation? I'm already loved. But he went through the whole thing of the gifts of the Spirit. And the gifts of the Spirit are given to us, and it's God who lives them out of us, not that we create them. So he was saying, don't pray for peace, because really you should be focusing on your relationship with the Lord, and the peace will be there. It will just be there. Love will be there. All these things. You cannot produce these things. I know that in my own heart sometimes I get there when I get stressed out. I have to stop and go, no, I don't ask the Lord for peace. I just say, thank you for the peace that you have given me to settle me. Okay? And anyways, so very, very shortly thereafter, and part of the training program was the men went on a 40-mile hike through the Bruce Trail, okay? Up and down and through the woods. and not so merrily we go. Okay. Anyways, and it was grueling, okay? It was, I carry a 40-pound pack on your back. You carry your own sleeping bag, all your cooking, all your food, everything, and it's divided. But there were a group of us, we were about 25 guys, I guess. And I started off near the front of the pack as we started off, but by halfway through the day, I'm at the back. I kept falling back and falling back and falling back. And then, these are what the thoughts that were going through my mind, because then these guys, marching along through the woods, decided to sing choruses and hymns. I mean, I've already stripped the skin off of my shoulders with this pack. My feet, I'm sure, have blisters on them, okay, because I can feel something happening down there. I didn't dare take my shoes off. I was afraid my feet would swell and I'd never get them back on again. But at any rate, and I got angry, very angry. And what I had learned through reading that little book was be honest with God. Be honest when you're out of fellowship or when you're confronted with your sin. Don't try to defend it. Don't try to explain it, because he just wants to hear the truth. Any joy, I don't have any peace, and I just want to be out of here. And everything changed. I don't know how, but there was this overwhelming sense that God was okay. You're okay. And the peace, not that I started singing hymns, okay, but I accepted that this is what the Lord had for me, and he is the one who provided the peace. I couldn't manufacture it. I couldn't love these guys, and I had already admitted to that, and that's all he wanted was a true confession. And then I could experience the fruit of the Spirit. Then it came out of me, and it was the most miraculous. It was the turning point in my life, if you want to put it that way, as far as my spiritual walk was concerned, because now I knew it wasn't dependent on me. It was dependent on God working in me. It was all him. He produces the spiritual life, not me. And that's where I've been wrong all along. I thought somehow I produce the spiritual life. I do this and this and this and this, and then I'm spiritual. And God was teaching me, no, that's not what it is at all. It's just admitting that you don't have any of it, and I will be it for you. It was miraculous anyways, for me. I hope that encourages you as well. But anyway, I really got off topic there, but I couldn't resist sharing that. So, okay. So Solomon here in his proverb is basically saying that same thing. Okay. And you get, let's go into Proverbs 3 again, verse 10. So your barns will be filled with plenty, and your vats will overflow with new wine. And then verses 13 to 18. How blessed is the man who finds wisdom, and the man who gains understanding, for her profit is better than the profit of silver, and her gain better than fine gold. She is more precious than jewels, and nothing you desire compares with her. Long life is in her right hand, in her left hand are riches and honor. Her ways are pleasant ways, and all her paths are peace. She is a tree of life to those who take hold of her, and happy are all who hold her fast. Interesting. I think these are probably proverbs that he wrote in his early days, okay? Because we know, especially about Ecclesiastes, that's from a different period in his life. Okay, so what's the key or the keys to Solomon's future blessing? How can he guarantee that God will continue to bless him?
Few ingredients.
Pardon me?
His few ingredients. First of all, he has to rely on the Lord.
He has to rely on the Lord.
Do not believe that he's wise and he knows what to do, but ask Lord all the time what to do.
Okay, yes,
Honor the Lord with his word.
okay,
Also, discipline, like you in the back with the backpack, to accept and
Yeah.
not get angry.
Yeah, we're going, yeah, at least
We all do. But,
confess it,
but
yeah,
it is one of the ways
yeah,
we have to accept discipline.
yes, accept discipline if you're wrong.
Do not resist.
Yes, he had to keep the law, didn't he? In the Old Testament, it was a matter of keeping the law, following God's instructions. We talked about this last week when we got into the verse 1 of chapter 3, where it talks about him taking Pharaoh's daughter as a wife. And why would he do that? We talked about the fact that it was a political alliance, and one of the first instructions that was given to the new king is that he was to write a copy of the law. It's in entirety with the scribes, okay, who are monitoring this, because the scribes, if they made a mistake in what they wrote, you had to start over. You didn't use whiteout and continue on. You go back and start over. I mean, if it were me, I'd probably be writing it many times before I was finished. And by then, I've rehearsed all these laws many times through my mind, okay? Yeah, I probably got it memorized, which probably wouldn't be a bad thing, okay? But it seems that perhaps Solomon never did that because of some of the actions that we see in his life, okay? So keeping the law was very important in order to guarantee God's future blessings. And it even, doesn't it say that here? Okay, yeah, verse 14. Okay. Or verse 13, I have also given you what you have not asked for, both riches and honor, so that there will not be any among the kings like you all your days. If you walk in my ways, keeping my statutes and commandments, as your father David walked, then I will prolong your days. That almost seems to say that David walked perfect, doesn't it?
Yeah, to the point. I mean, David, yes. I was thinking talking about Solomon.
No, yeah, it almost comes across that way, that David walked a perfect life. We know that's not true.
No, he didn't.
Yeah, he has some fall down.
Yeah, he has problems, had problems, okay. But the thing is, and I think I thought when I read this, I thought, this lines up with what God says, that when you confess your sins, God takes them as far as the east is from the west, buries them in the deepest sea to be seen no more. And this is evidence of this. Because God could have said to Solomon, he could have said, now don't do what your father David did. Don't make those mistakes. He doesn't say that at all. Those things are gone. Because David confessed his sin, and God in his mercy forgave him. Okay? And here's basically the same lesson in a nutshell. If you walk in my ways, part of the walking in his ways is to follow the sacrificial system, right? You give sacrifices for sin, whatever, and then you enjoy God's blessing. Okay. And if Solomon obeys the Lord, what can he expect? Right at the end of verse 14.
A long life.
A long life. He could expect a long life if he followed the Lord. Okay, I want us to go over to 2 Chronicles chapter 1. If in your notes, at least those who are online, who downloaded the notes 2 or 3 weeks ago, the chapter is wrong there. It should be 2 Chronicles chapter 1, verses 7 to 12. So let's go over there for a moment. 1 Chronicles chapter 1, verses 7 to 12. Oh, I'm sorry. 2 Chronicles. Second Chronicles. Second Chronicles 1 verses 7, no, Second Chronicles chapter 1, verses 7 to 12. Okay, I think I got it right now. Okay, starts off, it says, "In that night God appeared to Solomon and said to him, 'Ask what I shall give you.'" This is the parallel passage, by the way. "Solomon said to God, 'You have dealt with my father David with great loving kindness and have made me king in his place. Now, O Lord God, your promise to my father David is fulfilled, for you have made me king over a people as numerous as the dust of the earth. Give me now wisdom and knowledge, that I may go out and come in before this people, for who can rule this great people of yours?' God said to Solomon, 'Because you have had this in your mind and did not ask for riches, wealth, or honor, or the life of those who hate you, nor have you even asked for long life, but you have asked for yourself wisdom and knowledge, that you may rule my people over whom I have made you king, wisdom and knowledge have been granted to you. And I will give you riches and wealth and honor, such as none of the kings who were before you has possessed, nor those who will come after you.' So Solomon went from the high place which was at Gibeon, from the tent of meeting to Jerusalem, and he reigned over Israel." Now here's an interesting question. What's missing when you compare the two passages? When you compare the passage in 1 Kings chapter 3 with 1 Chronicles chapter 1, 2 Chronicles chapter 1, there's a difference.
Second Chronicles doesn't have any if statements.
Doesn't have any if statements, yes. There's no mention if you follow me or if you follow the law. That's not in 2 Chronicles. Interesting, okay? All right, going back to 1 Kings chapter 3, verse 15. "Then Solomon awoke, and behold, it was a dream, and he came to Jerusalem and stood before the ark of the covenant of the Lord, and offered burnt offerings and made peace offerings and made a feast for all his servants." So what does he do when he gets back to Jerusalem?
Make offerings to the Lord.
He made offerings to the Lord.
Saying thank you, I think, basically, with the offerings.
Yes. Okay. These are peace offerings. It says he offered burnt offerings and made peace offerings. Okay. Peace offerings, as Eva was just saying, were actually offerings of thankfulness, of thanksgiving, of praise to the Lord. And they were the only, notice what happens to those offerings. The peace offerings, that is.
You're thinking about that he made feast for all his servants?
Yeah. He gave the peace offering. He offered the offerings, and then they were distributed to the people. And now, in our mind, we're probably thinking, what? I thought the offerings were always just to the Lord, and the priests were allowed to eat certain ones. Okay. The peace offerings that were the only sacrifices that were allowed to be eaten or consumed by those offering them. Interesting. And so Solomon has a feast of thanksgiving to the Lord. Can we think of any feast that we have that is a feast of thanksgiving to the Lord?
Other than the Thanksgiving feast?
And that's not the one I had in mind.
Okay.
You're not referring to communion, are
I
you?
think communion. Isn't that actually supposed to be a feast of thanksgiving? We actually partake in it. We consume it. Okay? And so all the offerings in the Old Testament were the only ones that were allowed to be given to the people were the peace offerings, thanksgiving offerings. Okay? And so that kind of gives it a little different perspective on communion. Because our communion, sometimes, though we're remembering the Lord's sacrifice, in my mind, it should be a response of thankfulness, not, not this, like those who if I may say, Catholics where you flog yourself, you know, and stuff, and
Jesus said, do this in remembrance of me.
in remembrance, yes.
So you're remembering what he did for you.
Yes, in thanksgiving,
And thanks.
in thanks, okay? Not a, it can become like a false humility, you know,
Somber.
yeah, I don't think it needs to, there has to be a certain seriousness, but it can also be joyful at the same time, okay? And yes, there's a part for introspection, but not to be morbid, if you get what I'm saying. It's not to, I'll try better, or whatever, but rather a response of thanks for the sacrifice, okay? So Solomon offers the sacrifice, and then they all partake in this meal of thanksgiving, okay? All right, I'm overdoing it, sorry. Okay, let's go on to verses 16 to 18, and we're well familiar with this story, but let's read it anyways. It says, then 2 women who were harlots came to the king and stood before him. The one woman said, "O my lord, this woman and I live in the same house, and I gave birth to a child while she was in the house." The fact that both these women are living in the same house suggests that they're prostitutes, okay? There's no mention of husbands, okay? They live together. It seems that way at least. It happened on the 3rd day after I gave birth that this woman also gave birth to a child, and we were together. There was no stranger with us in the house, only the 2 of us in the house. This woman's son died in the night because she lay on it. So she arose in the middle of the night and took my son from beside me, while your maidservant slept, and laid him to her bosom, and laid her dead son to my bosom. When I arose in the morning to nurse my son, behold, he was dead. But when I looked at him carefully in the morning, behold, he was not my son, whom I had borne. Then the other woman said, "No, for the living one is my son, and the dead one is your son." But the first woman said, "No, for the dead one is your son, and the living one is my son." Thus they spoke before the king. Quite a dilemma. Then the king said, "The one says, 'This is my son who is living, and your son is the dead one.' And the other one says, 'No, for your son is the dead one, and my son is the living one.' The king said, 'Get me a sword.' So they brought a sword before the king. The king said, 'Divide the living child in 2, and give half to the one and half to the other.'" Can you imagine? All right. Then the woman whose child was the living one spoke to the king, for she was deeply stirred over her son, and said, "O my lord, give her the living son, and by no means kill him." But the other said, "He shall be neither mine nor yours, divide him." Then the king said, "Give the first woman the living child, and by no means kill him. She is his mother." When all Israel heard of the judgment which the king had handed down, they feared the king, for they saw that the wisdom of God was in him to administer justice. Who gets the credit for this justice? The Lord does. I thought, did Solomon come up with this solution?
The Lord give him the wisdom. So
Yes, the Lord in his mind said, "This is what you do." And what he did. Okay?
it was a really good idea.
Pardon me?
It was a really good idea because real mother will not give the kid to be cut on half.
Exactly. I mean, what other solution was there? How are you going to get the one who's lying to actually admit that she's lying?
You cut him in half, both of them have dead kids.
Exactly. But the wisdom that the Lord gave him was that the one who really loved this child would be willing to give this child up to see him live. And only the Lord, okay? And it doesn't say anything here. As soon as Solomon hears the story and he's determined, okay, here's the problem, immediately he has the answer. God gives it to him. Okay. Have you been in situations in your life where you're not sure what to do and you ask the Lord for the answer and you have it? Or you have peace about what the correct thing is to do? You just know that this is the right thing? Okay? So many times in our lives when we're faced with a dilemma, okay, what's our first reaction? Usually, not always.
Panic.
Panic, yeah. Try to figure it out on your own.
Well,
Try to figure it out.
What am I gonna do now?
Pros and cons, back and forth, and all the time that you're doing this, trying to figure it out, how much peace do you have?
No.
None. None. Better that from the outset, and I'm talking to myself, okay? From the outset is to say, Lord, I don't know what to do, but you do know what the right answer is here. So please direct my thoughts and my actions.
and my steps.
My steps, yes.
I had the same similar experience, not with what to do, but you're looking for something and you can't find it.
Yes,
And you say, Lord, you know where it is.
yes,
And then 2 minutes later, there it is.
yes, yep. I have had that experience multiple times. The thing is, okay, you all know that I'm a tax preparer, and so I have many papers sitting on my desk and when I'm working on tax returns, and sometimes it's kind of like,
Where do I start?
where is that slip?
Where did I put that?
Where did I put it? And because I've got files, okay, so I have files piled up here and I have files piled up there, and I'm working on somebody's tax return, and all the slips, as I work on them, get put on a brown envelope and into their file. But every once in a while I have to go back into that file and look for a particular slip, and there have been occasions when I can't find it. It's not in that envelope. Where did it go? And I'm starting to panic, okay? And I start going through everything. And then this little small voice says, ask. Oh, Lord, where is it? I mean, that's literally it. Lord, where is it? You should look in this envelope or this drawer, There it is. Just like that. And I think, you've done it again, stupid. You should have asked in the first place. You spent a half an hour tearing through everything and you wouldn't have had to. At any rate, and I did, I put it in the wrong file. Somehow I put it in someone else's file. And there it was, staring right at me when I opened the file. There it was. Okay, anyway, good lesson for all of us, right? There are much more major things in our lives too. Okay, so you're in the process of buying a house. You need to buy a house. And here's this offer, or it's available. Should I take it? Should I not take it? Can we afford this? Can't we afford this? The monthly payments for the mortgage, on and on we go. And I think the thing, and we always say this, the Lord knows what we should or should not do. And whether, because the Lord knows the long term, okay? He knows that, yes, you may be able to make the mortgage payments right now, but if interest rates go up to this, you won't be able to, and you would lose the house. And so the Lord may say, no. Even though it, in my mind, or our minds, it looks right now, it looks fine. 5 years from now, it might not be so fine. And the Lord knows that. He knows the end from the beginning. And so the Lord may just not give you peace to go on with that. I'm just giving that as a possibility. And it could be anything else too. Purchase of a car or changing jobs. Should I change employers here, or should I stay and, even though I don't like the people I work with, should I stay here anyways? I mean, yeah, and I think many of us, if not all of us, have been in situations like that, where we just don't know what the correct thing to do is. And the Lord can actually be our peace. Not give us peace, but be our peace in a situation. That's what I say about when I was talking about the fruit of the Spirit. Okay? You can't... The fruit of the Spirit are from the inside out, and they're God-produced. And so God can give us the peace about whether to go or not to go in a situation. All right. So he worships at the ark. Okay, going on. So here we have this situation, like here, okay. I found it was interesting that, like his father, Solomon gave the common people access to the royal court and the king. And if you would go back to 2 Samuel 14, you'd find that David gave people access to the court as well. And so Solomon carries that out. He didn't have to. He didn't have to do this. There were judges at the city gates that could handle situations, but Solomon kept, on a level with the people, at least initially. Okay, and so you have these two women coming to Solomon with this problem. And, okay, so in 2 Samuel 14, if you remember the situation, after Absalom has killed Amnon for raping Tamar, okay, Joab actually comes to David, telling him to bring back Absalom into the court after Absalom was put into exile or house arrest or whatever you want to call it. And to get through to David, Joab conspires. He brings this lady, this woman of Tekoa, to come in and share a story with David that's a ruse. Going to trick him into bringing Absalom back into the court. But here's just another example where this woman could actually come into the court and in the presence of the king. It just, in those cultures, that was unheard of. Okay? Esther, when she went before the king, she was taking her life in her hands. If he didn't put her scepter toward her, she was dead. She'd be killed instantly. Okay? But here, it's nice to see that in Israel, in the court, at least in these days, that both David and Solomon had the court open so the common people had access, which is a good thing, so that there was this rapport built with the people who would love and trust him, rather than he's aloof. You know, we can't get close to him. You know, so I wrote down here. What does wisdom help Solomon to see beyond the situation itself with these two women? What does wisdom give him? What can he see that's not apparent? He can see into their hearts. He can see their true motive. Okay? And so on that basis, that's where the understanding, as he saw these two women, he had the wisdom and he had the understanding. He knew what was going on in the minds of these two women. One to protect her child, the other didn't give a care. Okay? And so it gave him understanding. And boy, there are times, I'm sure for all of us in our lives, we wished we had understanding. And so, but it's readily available to us. What does James say?
Ask for wisdom daily.
Ask for wisdom, and
If you don't ask, you will not have.
right. So you ask the Lord for wisdom and
In the same.
he will give it.
Yes. But you have to believe.
Oh yeah, you have to believe. Yes, I mean, yeah.
Otherwise you are like on the ocean.
Yeah, it says that in there, in that passage as well. And believe, don't turn. When you ask for God for wisdom, expect that he's going to actually give you that wisdom. Okay. Well, our time is up, and we'll start into chapter 4 next week.